Will you pray with me? God of life and love, of soft rain and rolling thunder, I give you thanks for this day and for this time to be together to discern your call for our work in this life. Amen. So, when we agreed to do a short sermon series as part of our Just Peace discernment process, I was excited. This was the first time that Scott and I had done a sermon series outside of liturgical calendar. But then Scott chose justice, and then he chose peace, and I thought, okay, cool, what am I supposed to focus on? The lectionary text for today is the story of Lazarus, and though it is not the focus of our time together this morning, it did influence the shape and the form of this final Just Peace sermon. In particular, I thought about the Lazarus, or perhaps Lazari, in our midst. As you may have inferred from our words of meditation, part of this morning is talking about healthcare, particularly the cost and morally dubious aspects of our healthcare system. And I think all of this is connected to one of the goals of the call for Just Peace, to create peace in the marketplace so that all may live with dignity. Now, in full disclosure, throughout this Just Peace process, I have at times been a little bit confused because some of the parts of Just Peace seem a bit vague, seem a bit wide open. They're hard to understand in practical terms. I think peace in the marketplace is one of those terms that sounds and looks really great on paper, but in practice it's not quite clear what all that's supposed to mean. According to the World Council of Churches, peace in the marketplace is nurtured by creating economies of life. Their essential foundations are equitable socio-economic relationships, respect for workers' rights, the just sharing and sustainable use of resources, healthy and affordable food for all, and broad participation in economic decision-making. Nothing I said there should be new for people of this faith. In fact, almost all of those considerations are assumed to be part of the work of Christ's church in the world. And so I think it's a particularly curious thing when we see churches or church-based organizations not only ignoring that call, but also actively working against it. For the better part of my life and many of yours, this country has been embroiled in a series of controversies and debates about the cost of healthcare. In the past decade and a half, I think great strides have been made in working towards a day where every person in this country has access to and is enrolled in what we might call quality, affordable health insurance. Despite those strides, there are still millions of people who lack either quality or affordable health care, and in many cases, they lack both. Now, many people are quick to point out the work of private corporations and private equity firms, or political calculus, or intractability, or insert any other reasonable group with whom to place the blame for our current reality. But I don't think that many of us would look towards the church as a possible source of that problem. As many of you no doubt know, even if someone can't afford health insurance, they still rightfully seek out medical care. Providers then have a litany of options to offer those patients, including the complete and total forgiveness of any amount they owe for the care that they've received. There are many organizations that do exactly that, or they get as close as they can to it. But there's one particularly egregious example of a church-based hospital that did not even consider that as an option. And in fact, they actively steered their patients away from programs that would help them afford medical care. About 4 years ago, an expose revealed that a Methodist hospital in Memphis, the largest hospital in that city, one of the biggest in this country, engaged in a practice of aggressively targeting its patients for unpaid medical bills. Over a 4-year period, this hospital sued more than 8,000 people, a little more than 5 people every single day for 4 straight years. Now, all of this took place in a city where 1 in 5 people and 1 in 3 children live below the poverty line. What's most astonishing about this number of lawsuits, of the 8,300 lawsuits filed in that time, several hundred were filed against the hospital's own employees. Employees who sought care at their employer because their health insurance offered by their employer all but required that they seek care at providers owned or contracted by their hospital. And another illustration of how aggressively this hospital pursued debt, this hospital filed and won judgments that garnished the wages of nearly 100 of its employees. A wage garnishment can be as high as 25% of one's disposable income. I know that sometimes I talk a bit fast or a bit low, so I'm going to summarize what I just said. A Christian hospital in one of the poorest major cities in this country offered its employees insurance that required they seek care from their employer. And when those same employees couldn't actually afford the care that they needed, their employer took them to court, and then in many cases sought to take back the very money they were paying them for the work they did. I could say so much more about this, but in the interest of dedicating more time to what I think peace in the marketplace means, I will simply say that the practices of that hospital came nothing close to just peace. The practices of that hospital, founded in and on behalf of the name and work of Jesus Christ, provided a great disservice to his name. And it is a shame that that hospital had to be shamed in order to change its behavior. If the work of that hospital isn't the right approach, you might be asking, what is? I think Deuteronomy offers a good guide. Open your hand to the poor and the needy neighbor in your land. It's pretty straightforward. It's very clear. It's nothing that we haven't heard before. The call is clear, and the response is too. Shortly after this news about the hospital in Memphis broke, a curious thing happened within the United Church of Christ. UCC churches in Chicago partnered together to say, no more. They worked with an organization called RIP Medical Debt, which purchases debt for pennies on the dollar to forgive the debt of nearly 6,000 families on Chicago's South Side. Now, on average, every dollar sent to RIP Medical Debt results in the purchase and cancellation of $100 of medical debt. And so in this way, this church in Chicago started a thing that didn't stay limited to Chicago. It affected families and congregations all across this country. For the United Church of Christ, the Southern New England Conference forgave $26 million of medical debt in their 3 states. In Kansas and Oklahoma, more than $5 million. In Missouri, Arkansas, and Tennessee, more than $15 million. All told, in 2 years, youth groups, church-based partners, and congregations of the United Church of Christ purchased and forgave more than $120 million of medical debt for individuals and families in almost every state in this country. The folks whose debt is forgiven remain anonymous to the UCC. Instead, RIP Medical Debt sends a letter to them on the church's behalf. The gentleman whose words you read for meditation this morning, Chris A., he received this letter from the UCC in Ohio. The funds that abolished your debt were generously provided by the United Church of Christ. No matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome in our churches. You are beloved by God, and your debt has been forgiven. Being poor, staying poor, those realities actively inhibit the ability of people to live lives of dignity. And while there are a great number of churches that are actively engaging in addressing the material realities of poverty, precious few are engaged in addressing the structural realities of that poverty. Just Peace calls us to do both. Just Peace calls us out of our places of privilege and comfort and into the work of changing the world. Just Peace calls us to reorient ourselves to, instead of asking, what is best for me, move us towards asking instead, what is best for the least of us? What is best for those without my salary or my benefits or my standard of living or my level of education? What is best for the neighbor who I know exists but have not seen? At its core, I think Just Peace calls us to make real the words of the prayer that Jesus taught us in its variations. God's kingdom come, God's will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. To really believe those words, to live those words as truth, That is, I believe, the real power and glory of the story of this faith. In calling into being a world that has enough to support the lives and dignity of every part of creation, God makes real a vision for every single person to live with dignity and fullness of life. And where we depart from that vision, we are called to guide ourselves and others back towards it. May we do that work. May we answer that call. May we build a just world for all. Amen.